All right, so some of the biggest news that has hit the crypto industry, maybe even above the Ripple win, and that is the U.S. House vote that occurred yesterday, actually last night. We're going to break down over 10 hours of hearings, debates, amendments. We're going to put that all into 13-minute clips for you guys, 13 minutes total on the clips. This will surprise you. It's also going to give you a good insight of what the future is for crypto in our country here in the United States. It's a big one. You don't want to miss it. My name is Paul Barrow. Welcome back into Tech Path. Before we get started, thanking our sponsor out there, and of course that is iTrust Capital, looking at long-term holding. You want to do Bitcoin, you want to do gold, silver, you can do all that in an IRA, self-directed, all from the iTrust Capital website. And it's very easy. All you have to do is join with our link down below. You get a $100 funding reward. It's very simple if you want to stay on the crypto side, if you want to get into precious metals. And the cool thing is there's no monthly fee. All you have to do is, of course, pay your fees when you do your trades. So very easy. And remember, IRAs, very good tax benefits. Consult your CPA. I think you're going to like what you hear. All right, let's get into a couple of things here. I want to remind everybody that we have been on this track for a very long time, tracking every single bill, every single House hearing, all of what's happening in Europe, you name it, we have covered it. And here is the playlist that I would recommend if you have not had a chance to understand what's happening from a legal front around crypto. This is by far the best list on crypto in the entire YouTube ecosystem. There is no other channel that is doing it at this level. And I'm talking about really going into deep dive, analyzing these videos, breaking this down, studying it, doing the research to support it. There's a lot of work here, guys, and you guys are getting that all just because you're a subscriber. And if you're not a subscriber, subscribe right now. And if you do like these kind of videos where we break this stuff down, hit that like button. It does help us out. All right, so let's get into it today. I want to just remind everybody, this was the House Financial Services Committee hearing and vote. This was a vote that basically combined a culmination of bills. And I want to get into the first video clip coming in from McHenry. It's the intro. Listen in.
We're here to take an historic step for American innovation and consumer protection as we undertake the first ever legislative markup for digital assets. The legislation we're considering today is more than a decade in the making. This is a software revolution and a financial revolution if done correctly. Developers are using blockchain technologies as a building blocks to create the next generation of decentralized internet technology, also known as Web3, which will give individual users more ownership over their data, transactions, and finances. As other jurisdictions like the UK, the EU, Singapore, and Australia have moved forward with clear regulatory frameworks for digital assets, the United States is at risk of falling behind. We intend to change that today.
The Fit for the 21st Century Act provides the CFTC the jurisdiction over digital commodities and clarifies the SEC's remit over digital assets offered as a part of an investment contract. But it creates a disclosure regime and a process for the SEC to certify that a blockchain system is in fact decentralized and establishes a robust consumer protection that do not currently exist for Americans.
All right, so I think that clip sets it up for you perfectly. Did you ever think you would hear the term Web3 from the House floor? We heard it today. All right, so I want to go also into all the bills that were discussed yesterday. So this was the bill 4763, which was the FIT Act. We also had the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act. This came in from Emmer's. We had the Financial Technology Protection Act. This one, not so much important. The No Russian Agriculture Act, not so important. Exposing China Support Act, not so important. The fentanyl and anti-money laundering. Some of these had some blockchain elements in it, but the top two were really critical on where the future of this goes. I want to get into clip 2 now. This is Maxine Waters. Let's go to her.
Let me review some of my biggest concerns with this bill. And this bill would allow commingling of customer funds, which was a key factor in the fall of FTX. This is why I call this bill the Not for the 21st Century Act. And I will be calling on members to treat it just like that.
We've made some choices, yes, and maybe they're not perfect, sure, and we'll hear about all those things. But there is no commingling. The worst practices of FTX are banned in this bill. It is better, at worst case, than what we have currently, which is no consumer protection.
It does not allow for the commingling of funds, except in the very specific case in which somebody is pairing their Ethereum with other people's Ethereum in order to launch a better attempt to get proof of stake on a network determination. Are we comfortable walking away having done nothing? Coinbase, for whom I have no particular love, but Coinbase going to the SEC and saying, we want to register, we want to comply, let us do that, no answer, no answer, no answer, until the SEC initiates litigation against this entity who went to the SEC and said, we want to be regulated. The Ripple lawsuit, which to this day I do not understand. That is the status quo. Utter lack of transparency, total chaos. Let me be very clear here. I think this industry is full of utter nonsense. But I feel the way I did in 1999 when the internet was new. And there was an immense amount of utter nonsense, but the internet proved to be valuable. I'm a deep skeptic of this industry, but we deserve better than the status quo. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to yield to you for 1 second because I would like to hear you say that in the Rules Committee you will support the $120 million that is being made available to the CFTC. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. In fact, I'll support $150 million.
It's sold to the gentleman in the bow tie.
I like it. All right, so the good thing is it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be a lot of changes here in this bill, but they did address all of the real deep failings of what our industry is facing, and those are the good parts. That, so far, if I would give this, on a 1 to 10 in terms of what we saw yesterday, I'm still going to put it around a 7.5 to an 8, which is very high when you think about this. Let's go to our third. This one is an interesting. So this is the worst bill ever. Listen in.
Not all innovation is good innovation. Some of the most creative people in the world are criminals. I think at the end of the day, this is a vote that no one is going to be proud of when the fullness of history bears out.
I've been on this committee for 20 years. And I can say unequivocally that this is the worst piece of legislation that has been presented for markup in that 20 years.
I agree with Mr. Lynch. This is not just a bad bill. It's a cruel bill. It's a deceptive bill. Come and have some sense here and vote against this bill.
Gentleman's saying there might be a chance.
It's something that the people who send us here from all of our districts want. We can always look at the regulatory framework. Just because we're done, we do this today, does not mean that we're done for all time. This is not a set it and forget it rotisserie oven.
All right, so of course with that, we can't go without showing Sherman on this around tokenized assets. Listen into this one.
First, I want to address an unintended consequence of this bill, because it's designed just to deal with crypto assets. But it will allow publicly traded companies to tokenize their equity securities and then circumvent SEC regulation, choosing instead to be regulated by the CFTC. So if you have an investment in Apple or General Motors, this bill means you don't get protected.
Case that my colleague just fictionalized, Apple stock is a stock. You can tokenize it, but it would still be a security. And this bill makes that clear.
And in fact, the legislation says the term digital asset does not include any note, stock, treasury, stock security, future, all the traditional securities.
All right, so there you go. I mean, of course, we know Sherman. He is our court jester, so to speak, and he's going to continue to be that. I'm still not sure why, because he continues to get kind of embarrassed on this in public, and I just think he's become the clown of the House. Let's go into our next clip on the SEC versus Ripple.
Now, I know that some look at the Ripple case, a district court case out of New York, as somehow trimming the SEC's power under existing law. I'll point out that opinion said half the time XRP is a security and half the time it isn't. That's half a win if it wasn't really kind of a ridiculous outcome.
We've seen a case via the Ripple lawsuit that Mr. Sherman referenced. It provides less clarity and less consumer protection for average everyday investors than it does for institutional investors. It is in Congress's interest to remedy that.
Mr. Gensler at the SEC has brought 131 cases. 131 cases, and he's won 130 and a half, if you count the Ripple case last week. So what he's doing, the SEC is regulating by the application of law, right?
Not true. They settled 130 cases.
Frankly, I think that the Ripple case will be overturned on appeal.
The SEC could, in theory, appeal, but an appeal would take years. Albert Einstein said, if we do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, that's the definition of insanity. You know, we as Democrats argue that we've ceded far too much authority to the courts, particularly the Supreme Court. Republicans often argue that Congress has ceded too much authority to regulators. We can reclaim as our authority as a legislature by actually legislating.
Imagine that, actually legislating, creating laws that the people of our fine country would want to actually happen. So interesting stuff here. All of this will roll down into a vote, so you guys will get a chance to see that. Make sure and smash the like button. It is one of the ways that will help other people start to learn about what's happening, not only in government around crypto, but also for the future of digital assets as a whole. Let's get into our next clip. This is going to be talking about how Sherman's he's stalling a bit, some of the problems that he's facing with the committee, etc. Listen in.
Turning to the next amendments, for what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
I have an amendment at the desk.
The gentleman has an amendment on the next. We will pause while that amendment is distributed.
So if people think that it would be wonderful to say you don't need ID to have a crypto account, then give the dollar a fair shake and say we're going to start having bank accounts and you don't need a government license to open one. I'll be down at Bank of America. I'll open an account in the name of Patrick McHenry. Who's to say that isn't my name?
Gentleman yield on that account?
What?
Did you yield to the gentleman?
I yield to the gentleman.
It's Mr. Scott's time.
Well, I'll claim time because this is utter
Oh,
nonsense.
okay. So while I'm opening an account in the name of Patrick McHenry, I'll open an account in the name of Patrick McHenry for Congress, and maybe there'll be a spare check I can deposit in it.
So this is utter nonsense. The very nature of the technology is an open, permissionless blockchain. Hear me out. Hear me out. I listened to your arguments, but you have an open system whereby the transmission lines are public. And at either end of this, you have a wallet. And the wallet is your ownership of this. At this stage of the game, I don't know the net worth of my colleagues except for the disclosures we have to do in the House. Do you want to advertise that to your neighbors and your friends? Do you want to advertise it to everyone on the blockchain? I would submit you don't. Well, government agencies have the worst record of ensuring our private information remains private.
Gentleman's
I
time
oppose
is
the amendment and I ask my colleagues to vote no.
Is there further debate? If not, the question accrues on the amendment to the gentleman from California, Mr. Sherman. All those in favor shall be signified by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed shall be signified by saying nay. Nay. In the opinion of the chair, the nays have it.
You don't want to.
The nays have it, and the amendment is not adopted.
All right, so Sherman was defeated finally with his. We still don't know what his agenda is. Don't know who is necessarily in his. Probably need to do a little bit more of a deep dive on his campaign contributions. The real question here is that there were so many amendments that were put forth, and just like you would think that they were getting ready to go to a vote, another amendment would come out. So all of this was a bit of theater. There was a lot of strategic maneuvering going on. I think a lot of backroom deals of where the bipartisanness of this bill started to come out in the actual amendments that were accepted and the ones that were denied. So very interesting stuff. Let's go to Tom Emmer, his bill, and talk a little bit more about how Lynch is now stalling on this one. Listen in.
H.R. 1747, a bill to provide a safe harbor from licensing and registration for certain non-controlling blockchain developers and providers of blockchain services.
I've worked closely with FinCEN, and the one thing that I see as a pattern is this bill, and to give a carve out just because someone is operating on a blockchain, it's a great gift for the blockchain association, but it undermines, I believe, our ability to sit down and talk to FinCEN and to find out whether or not this actually facilitates, financial crimes by the use of a blockchain. Well, FinCEN has said we don't have time to. They got this so late that they haven't had time to review this and give us
Will
a
the gentleman
meaningful
yield?
opinion of this. Yeah.
I find that interesting. This has been FinCEN's own guidance that was created under the Obama administration, which has been in force all throughout the time since. We are merely taking FinCEN guidance and codifying it. I yield back.
That is not what they say, so we have a difference of opinion, but
Mr. Emmer has talked about this for 7-8 years, roughly. This is not a gotcha thing, and Mr. Soto, his Democrat co-sponsor, they've been longtime advocates for this. So this is not a last-minute thing. Just want to
reclaiming my
assure
time.
my colleagues.
Chatting about things is one thing, but having a markup on a bill is quite a different process.
A majority haven't voted in favor of H.R. 4763 as amended. The bill's ordered favorably to the House, and without objection, motion reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to the chair's previous order, we'll now take the votes pending on ordering H.R. 1747 favorably reported.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 29 and the nays are 21.
A majority haven't voted in favor of H.R. 1747 as amended. The bill is ordered favorably reported to the House.
All right, so that was the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act that Emmer's presented. It was favorably moved to the House. This will go to the floor. So that was a good thing. Obviously, the importance of safe harbor. This is, again, these were scenarios that play out. And what you're seeing is kind of the political theater that happens in Capitol Hill. And it's important for, if you guys are not aware of how these committees work and how all these bills kind of make their way through, if you think about your civics course, it's very important because of the deals that are being struck and made throughout this. Let's go to our next clip. This is actually the final vote on the FIT Act. Listen in.
All those in favor of a recorded vote, please raise your hands. A sufficient number having raised their hand, a recorded vote is ordered. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Hill.
Hill, yes.
Mr. Hill votes aye. Mr. Lucas.
Yes.
Mr. Lucas votes aye. Mr. Lukemeyer. Mr. Lukemeyer votes aye. Mr. Huizinga. Mr. Huizinga votes aye. Mrs. Wagner. Mrs. Wagner votes aye. Mr. Emmer. Mr. Emmer votes aye. Mr. Davidson. Mr. Davidson votes aye. Mr. Donalds. Mr. Donalds votes aye. Mr. Nunn. Mr. Nunn votes aye. Ms. Waters. Ms. Waters votes no. Mr. Sherman. Mr. Sherman votes no. Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott votes no. Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch votes no. Mr. Green. Mr. Green votes no. Mr. Himes. Mr. Himes votes aye. Mr. Foster.
No.
Mr. Foster votes no. Ms. Tlaib. Ms. Tlaib votes no. Mr. Torres.
I vote aye.
Mr. Torres votes aye. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman votes aye. Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 35 and the nays are 15.
Thanks so much.
All right, so there it is. This is a big deal. That, first of all, overwhelming victory here by I think the bill proponents, and also this sets up for what I think is going to be a lot of negotiation as the bills starts to mature and gets to the House floor and gets a chance to truly be voted over to the Senate, which would then make it law. This is a big deal because we are on the first time in the United States that there has been clarity in language within a structure that can now put it in front of our legislators to make this happen. So if you think about crypto in general, the good point is just this movement alone is huge in the future of where crypto, blockchain, Web3, really kind of the advancement of technology here in the United States. And I think, many of these guys talked about this even to the sense of saying, hey, maybe they don't understand the technology, they're not sure it's all going to do anything, but the opportunity for innovation is here, and it's a big one for sure. Okay, so we're going to go to our last clip. This is talking about what's happening now, today, as we actually film this, is the stablecoin progress. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but listen into this clip.
I know there's a lot of question about stablecoin legislation and the ongoing negotiations that Ranking Member Waters and our teams have been having. They continue. I have no news today to report on a breakthrough, but we're going to continue to talk. There is goodwill and much hard work by the Republican staff on the Financial Services Committee and the Democrat staff on the Financial Services Committee in coordination with Treasury. And I very much appreciate that engagement. And Ranking Member Waters, I want to thank you for that engagement. And we'll continue. We'll continue those conversations that you started last Congress. I think there's goodwill on both sides, from your team, my team, and in our conversations, and I'm grateful for that.
The negotiations have been going on for over a year on stablecoins. We've gotten very close. There are issues, some unexpected, that have arisen. And so your decision today to continue negotiating, continue looking at the possibility of stablecoins is something that I welcome.
I appreciate that tone of conciliation here at the end on our stablecoin negotiation. I think we're of like mind here.
All right, so that's a lot more favorable in terms of the potential of a stablecoin bill getting to the House floor and then making its way to Senate and possibly getting passed there as well. That is actually what's happening today on July 27th as we record this. One of the things that you'll note here, this of course is Patrick McHenry, the guy you just saw there on camera. He's delivered opening remarks at the markup of these stablecoin and the ESG legislations, which is where all of this is going to be holding. And essentially, it's basically setting out to establish a regulatory framework for payment stablecoins, protect self-custody for digital assets, and overturn the CFPB's disastrous small business lending data collection rule, which is kind of going into this whole ESG initiatives. But clarity for payment of Stablecoins Act recognizes a lot of regulatory paths approving how stablecoin issues will be basically used as a payment architecture. And this is going to be good because this could be the true one bill that does make it through the House and makes it through the Senate. If this one gets through and we do get stablecoin regulation, that would be a massive leap forward in advancements around blockchain, crypto, Web3, and the use of blockchain technology as a whole for the United States. And I think that is when businesses will start coming in. We're going to see a lot more improvement in terms of institutional capital. Most likely it's going to affect ETFs even in the sense of who is in control of this technology. And if we do get these other bills coming through, which have now made it to the House floor, even though there's going to be a lot of modification, maybe some negotiation and a little bit of give and take, this is all good news for, I think, crypto in general. Now, as a reminder, like I said, guys, if you're not following our YouTube channel right now, make sure and subscribe. You can go right over here and catch up on all of these bills right here, all the way into, and including some of our Fed stuff. Almost all of our regulatory guidance is done on this one playlist. So very easy to get to. Just jump over here to the YouTube channel. If you go down here, you'll see U.S. crypto regulation and hearings, and you can get to all of those. And this also has some stuff in there, even on MiCA, which has been a big part of that in terms of a catalyst for what's happening around the world. All right, we're going to continue to dive in deep on these things, give you guys full breakdowns of it. The good thing is this vote was an overwhelming win. I was even surprised at the count there in terms of just the consistency of the people who are backing it on a bipartisan level. This shows very well for potentially making it through at least a House vote. So good stuff. We'll continue to grab this. And hopefully we'll get a chance to be in D.C. soon to be able to dive in a little deeper with a lot of these lawmakers. We've got some things planned for later in the fall. And of course, if you guys are not part of the Diamond Circle, get in now. It's free and it's easy. It's one of the biggest ways that you get additional content. We do also a podcast over there. Also, I do additional analysis that we don't put here on YouTube. So make sure and join that. Of course, if you guys are following me out there on Twitter, formerly Twitter, now X, it's just @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.